Afternoon, everyone, and happy Thursday. It's Alyssa Corm and Justin Nielsen here with a look at the stock market today. On today's show, we're going to talk about the session that saw small caps outperforming by quite a bit again, up pretty big, while the other three major indexes down a little bit in today's session. And Justin, what are the three names that we're going to highlight today?
We'll talk about Inspire Medical and Qualcomm, leading some of the chip makers in a breakout. Also, Yatsen, one of the stocks that we talked about on Stock of the Day a couple days ago, and also on IBD Live with a live trade this morning.
That we did. But first, a look at the major indexes. Here is the NASDAQ closing down about 0.1% for the day. The S&P 500 down 0.4%. The Dow down 0.2%. And small caps outperforming the Russell up 2.3% in today's session. What do you make of the day? I feel like it started off pretty good, but as the day wore on, did the picture change a little bit for stocks underneath the surface?
It certainly did. But, one of the things that was kind of constant throughout was the strength in the small cap market. So this is one of those things where, yesterday we talked about how big caps were kind of leading. There's been a lot of back and forth. And so if you take a look at the IWM, which is the iShares Russell 2000 ETF, we like to look at this because it kind of gives you an up-to-date look at what the Russell 2000 looks like. First of all, the small caps really started this run back in November, and so it's really been on a tear since then. You had some minor little blips at the beginning of the year in January here, but it's really recovered nicely. And it's just something to keep in mind that a lot of the big tech, is out of favor. We talked about how they were showing strength yesterday, but if you look at a lot of those relative strength lines, they're pretty dismal. Meanwhile, you've got in the small cap space a lot of activity there. The index is doing great. You've got financials. A lot of places in there as the treasury yields, the spreads, kind of increase on that, making it more attractive for banks. So there's a lot of things going on there that make the small caps very compelling right now.
And let's take a look at some individual stocks, starting off with Inspire Medical, ticker INSP. Breaking out today, as you mentioned, we were talking about this one on IBD Live, and we had been talking about it as it's been forming this tight consolidation after this big gap up here. The stock breaking out of a base with a 204.82 buy point, that relative strength line hitting a new high. We had above average volume. But what are some of the other things, Justin, that should factor into the analysis here in terms of whether Inspire is a good buy?
So a few things. I mean, number one, this does not have earnings, and that's not unusual for medical. Usually, the medical products, tend to be a little bit better in that regard in terms of having earnings. But right now, it's not profitable, so that's just something you have to be aware of. It's better to understand the story a little bit. What is it that they do that is unique and potentially something that could bring those earnings in the future? Now, the sales are much better. The revenue growth is there. However, they did miss a couple quarters ago. So sometimes when we don't have the earnings, we look to the sales, and if we see strong growth there, that can make up for it. But as you mentioned, there's a lot on the technical side that is very attractive about this. That blue dot that the is showing on MarketSmith, that is just to draw your attention to that relative strength line being at new highs. The base was nice. The breakout was basically picture perfect. I mean, you've got the strong move out of a flat base, and there's a lot of this tight action, and whether it's a 3 weeks tight or these flat bases that are appearing over and over. So as much as we are looking at the indexes as potentially being extended, there are still a lot of setups out there, and a lot of these stocks are still breaking out.
And let's take a look at a standout in the chip sector, Qualcomm, which gained about 2.2% today, slightly above average volume here as well. This is another name that's been on our radar since this last gap up here, pulling back. Potentially an early entry there, but a breakout today over that 160 level for Qualcomm, and some headlines to go a lot, and just a lot of, I guess, fundamental things, that story.
Yeah, exactly.
For Qualcomm right now.
If you think about it, for those of you that may have been investing for a while here, Qualcomm probably, is big on your radar because in the late 90s, this was a 2000% move in 1999. It was the darling. And
I
what
can't even go that far back without having to change the date and
No,
all
no, no,
that,
I'm
but
not asking you to. So, but yeah,
I tried there. Yeah.
just know that it was phenomenal. A very classic example of a climax top, by the way. If you do want to go into MarketSmith, go back to that time period. Not you, but for people on their own time. So, what was it that was driving that? It was the chips in the cell phones, right?
Yeah.
And now that we have so many smartphones and 5G rolling out, hey, there's
Mm-hmm.
another growth aspect here that could be a catalyst for it. Not only that, but you have some other headlines here. You had Taiwan Semiconductor. I mean, that was kind of helping, they had earnings
Yeah.
that they reported this morning. That was helping a lot of the chips. There's been a lot of strength in chips in general. So you've got an industry group that's behind you. You've got a specific area in 5G rollout where there's a lot of excitement there and a lot of growth potential. So that's driving some things up. And plus, you have a new CEO coming out. That was announced earlier this year, and an acquisition that could be helping them with their business, acquisition of Nuvia. And so you look at all of these different things,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of paints a compelling story for Qualcomm potentially having another move. And this has been already a very strong move. You can see, as you mentioned,
Yes.
that gap up on that earnings report and the earnings report before that kind of shows that there are things that are coming out in these earnings report that is causing analysts to reevaluate the valuation on this stock, and they keep on thinking, hey, this is something that needs to be revalued at a higher price.
That's right. Okay, well, let's also shift our attention to a relatively new issue, and that is Yatsen, YSG. And we talked about this one on IBD Live, a big move to new highs today for Yatsen, up 13%, breaking out of this IPO cup base. What are your thoughts here? Because even though we did see a breakout to new highs, does it now feel a bit extended?
Yeah, it does. I mean, this was a big move today. But the point that I wanted to bring up about this stock is, okay, Qualcomm, that's stock of the day today. So we're putting it on your radar.
Mhm.
Yatsen was stock of the day 2 days ago. So it's important that you're reading the stock of the day. I just want to kind of point that out to people because it gives you a sense of stocks that are setting up, stocks that are breaking out. It's very timely in the stocks that we choose. A lot of times, right after we get off of IBD Live, we choose that
Mhm.
stock based on what we saw in that first hour of trading. Sometimes we actually choose it during IBD Live. You'll see that live. And in this case, Chris Gessel, our chief content officer, was on the show today, and he liked the look of it this morning, and he went ahead and bought it, and he kind of walked through where he was putting his stops, how he was sizing his position, and so
Mhm.
there's a lot to learn from that process. But more than anything, you really want to have these on your radar ahead of time so that when they do
Yes.
move, you've done your
Mhm.
research. I was actually caught a little flat-footed on this today. Ed threw this over to me as host of the show, and I was like, you know what? I don't know that much about it. I hadn't read the IBD stock of the day, so I was kind of scrambling a little bit to educate myself. And there are compelling things, despite this being in China, which does scare a lot of people. It does have
Mhm.
the mutual fund, some mutual funds in there that we look at, specifically Fidelity, the Fidelity blue chip. It's not in our normal IBD mutual fund universe, but they are in there. Fidelity has kind of given its stamp of approval by buying some of this stock. And the IPO market has just been on fire this, the last few
Yes.
months. So, knowing that, you kind of
Yes.
have to kind of think, okay, regardless of what is causing it, there is something happening there, and you just want to be aware of it.
Yes. All right, Justin, thanks so much for your thoughts today and some great advice there on staying up to date with the stock of the day stories. They can pay off big time. We've seen
Absolutely.
it happen time and again. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. You can be sure the conversation is going to continue tomorrow morning on IBD Live, our Friday episode. We're going to cap off the weeks with some more great analysis for you. We hope you join us, investors.com/IBD Live. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.